I want to begin by quickly explaining something in the gospel. This is something I've been asked about from time to time, this idea of tradition. I'm not going to preach about tradition and explain all that, but I just want to explain to you what's going on. Mark, who's writing for Gentiles, does a little explaining in here. But the law prescribed certain practices before worship, cleaning vessels and washing this, and the priest had to do certain ablutions, etc. The Pharisees, one of the three main threads of tradition in Jews, Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. Pharisees were the most popular, and somehow or another, and it's not completely clear how it got started, but the Pharisees started this tradition of, well, if we should do this for worship, we should do this all the time. They were trying to live the life of the temple in everyday life. And so if we should wash vessels before sacrifices, we should wash them before we eat. If the priest has to do certain ablutions before sacrifice, then people should wash their hands before they eat, etc. This was not laid down in the law. There's nothing evil about it, I suppose, but remember what we heard? They said, why don't you follow the tradition of the elders? Jesus is much more concerned about them following the traditions of God, what God lays out, Remember in the first reading, don't add to or subtract from the law. Just do the law. I'm reminded when I came here, there were some liturgical practices that really didn't belong, and human beings beat we at the are. Some people are more conservative, some are more liberal, and so for a few years, I just kept saying this over and over again, let's just do what the church does. If it's prescribed in the missal, we'll do it. If it's proscribed in the missal, we won't do it. If it's allowed, we'll decide, Just do what the church does, I say. Anyway, that gives you an idea of what's going on in there. James, it's interesting. Some people are surprised when James says, the true religion is this: care for the elders, care for the widows and orphans in their affliction, and keep yourself unstained from the world. Most people would say, well, religion is a lot more than that. We got all kinds of rules, this, that, and the other. And so we don't have to worship? That's not mentioned, or prayer or anything? No. It's this: the practice of our religion, caring for others, especially in their afflictions, keeping ourselves unstained from the world. In other words, we don't adopt the practices of the world, but we live by the tenets of our religion, right? Keep ourselves unstained. How do we do that? James is assuming worship and prayer, right? That's where we get the grace, the strength to do those things. So James isn't saying that you do not have to worship, right, or anything like that. No. Through our worship, and for us, for instance, through reception of the Eucharist and the other sacraments, we get the strength and the grace to do what we should be doing, caring for the less fortunate and the afflicted, etc. And the strength to keep ourselves from sin and from other practices that draw us away from our religion. So again, a little explanation, but don't assume, because he's not assuming you don't have to worship, right? We come here, we receive our grace, right? We do other things too, worship. But then we go out, and we can go out and practice our religion because we've received grace from God. And what keeps us unstained and pure? I bet you most people would say, well, avoiding this, avoiding that, right? And that's Like, don't let these certain things in. And Jesus says, no, it's not that. It's not what comes in. He's talking about food, of course, that defiles, but what comes out of us defiles. And we have that long list, and blasphemy, envy, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, licentiousness. You might think to yourself, okay, those are pretty serious, and I haven't done any of these. Murder, I haven't murdered, committed adultery, etc. It doesn't matter. Jesus is naming things that are in what we call the Ten Commandments. That's where a lot of these come from, right? In other words, follow the law. But anything, and it's really important for us to get this. It's what we do that either allows us to become holier or defiles us, whatever it is. And we tend to blame other people or situations, Well, yeah, I lost my temper because so-and-so. No, you lost your temper because something inside of you is not yet turned over to God, right? Is not yet purified. You use bad language, you tell off-color jokes, you are rude to people, or you're impatient, or whatever it is, and it might be something serious in here, or it might be other things, but we blame ourselves for our faults and sins and failings, right? I forgot which one I was doing today, but I meant to do the confiteor. Through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Right? That's the claim. Right? And so we don't blame other people or other situations on our sins, right? We blame ourselves, and then what do? Then we seek God's mercy. And I want to end with this because I want to make sure that this comes across. Jesus can seem to us, especially to us in this kind of overly sensitive society we live in, Jesus can seem harsh with the Pharisees, right? It's because the Pharisees are hard-hearted. They're fighting him, right? But they point to other people. Your disciples aren't doing this, while all the time they're doing something that's actually against the law. But the one who comes to Jesus, naming his or her sin, asking for mercy, finds it. Right? So if you come to the Lord saying, this is my failure, this is my sin, this is my weakness, you'll find mercy. If you go to Jesus saying, no, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't need your mercy, I'm already good, blah, blah, blah. We don't rarely say those words, but that attitude. If we come to that, we'll find that Jesus pushes back because he doesn't want us to be that way. He wants to break that from us. If we come to Christ with a meek and humble heart, seeking forgiveness for our sins, acknowledging our failures and our need for grace, we will find, I guarantee you, every time, mercy.